A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Films I'm Willing to Talk About Again. And so, what we got here to talk about is yet another Walt Disney related production, Old Yeller, 1957, which is based on the Fred Gibson novel of the same name. But in any case though, I do consider this one to be a classic. An absolute classic that was certainly right to win a few awards here and there. But in any case though, this story that takes place in post-Civil War Texas is in fact about a small hunting dog that is adopted by a certain family out there in the open wilderness. This kind of landscape back in the day was very susceptible to a large number of different predators, from boars, bears, wolves, etc. Nowadays, while the populations are certainly very dense in most areas of the country as well as the world, there still is the chance that because of a lot of conservation efforts and plenty of environmental changes that we have been making over the years, that we will begin to see more of this stuff happen. I especially will never forget the times where I've heard about a cougar in the area of Menominee Falls. And we've had a few incidents like this happen, so in recent years, it's getting a little scary. But in any case though, Old Yeller, yet another dog film out there, but one that I feel does better than most others. Because at least for an adaptation based off of a certain book that came around a little earlier, Old Yeller is simply put the one thing out there that most people call the best doggone dog in the West. As well as, of course, the theme song itself having to tell us that right from the get-go when the film first introduces us to the opening credits scenes that take place, and the title card itself. So, aside from the theme song clearly addressing to us about what the film is essentially going to tell us, we do get to see exactly what happens here. A small family living out there in the wilderness, which of course is in fact out there looking for whatever possibilities could happen, because a civil war had taken place in recent years and that time was certainly quite a time to be alive in, especially with President Johnson at hand. So, and I'm speaking of Andrew, not Lyndon. But in any case though, the Civil War was a big occasion to be able to have certain things on you. Guns, moonshine, and water wells. Not to mention dogs. Yet this family did of course not have one of any sorts. And when it comes to how the family interacts with each other, from certain scenes that happen in dinner time, to of course a time where a dog steps up to their door. And at first, some tensions begin to build up, including a famous clash that happens between the two children involved, Travis and Arliss, whom of course bring out two different weapons, of course. I really do like that scene, especially where Arliss has a lot of disagreements against what Travis thinks about having dogs in the house, and pulls out a giant fork of some sorts. So, I mean, that was pretty funny right then and there. Eventually though, as time begins to fly by, they pretty much adjust to the dog itself and call him Old Yeller. But right after that one fight that happens between Travis and Arliss, the following day takes place. And we do get to see a pretty epic moment out there where Arliss and Yeller are in a pond, a very dirty, watery pond. Travis tells him to stop drinking out of there, and man, just starts throwing rocks at him even just to prove a point. Man, this guy clearly doesn't want to let up here. He gets a little too frustrated and very angered about having the dog around, and now he's going to start throwing rocks at him. So, of course we know how that carries on. But we do actually get to see a lot more craziness happen than just a few struggles between the brothers. Sibling rivalry is one thing, but how about at a point where the family actually gets involved with a stray bear cub? That's right. A bear cub wanders very close and looks to be trapped, so Arliss goes out to help him, and he basically gets more than what he bargained for. When a giant bear ends up coming to try to save the baby from harm, and assuming that Arliss is basically a predator of some sorts. But then guess what? Old Yeller saves them by attacking the bear. Now that's epic, if you ask me, because who would have thought that a giant grizzly bear or a black bear or a polar bear or any kind of bear could actually lose a fight against a dog? Realistically speaking, it has more biting pressure, enough to rip a person's arm off. So, right then and there, that was a pretty epic moment of how a dog apparently was able to take out a bear. Right then and there. And pretty much scare it off even, which is just unbelievable. Yet, of course, as time goes by, we do get to see more events take place. I'm just describing this scene by scene, but probably the most significant thing out there would have to be the combination of this one scene where Travis takes Old Yeller out to the valley and ends up getting into a bit of a ruckus out there with a large group of wild boars. And these boars do in fact cause plenty of damage to both of these characters. Both of them get pretty hurt for the most part. Probably the biggest thing of all, though, in the whole film is one where an entire generation of people, even to this day, seem to always recall. The moment where, one night, Old Yeller fights a rabid wolf outside of the house. And this wolf, of course, being infected with rabies, ends up biting Yeller. Even after it's killed, Yeller now has the rabies and becomes a vicious threat to the family. Even while being locked up inside of the shed that he's usually in during nightfall, it's fair to say that Old Yeller was suffering very badly. And rabies is a seriously scary disease. Even today, a lot of us worry about what it could possibly do to you. This virus is not like any other. But back in the Civil War era of our lives, it was way worse than you could have imagined because none of us really knew what it was going to do to you. But in this case, though, it basically drove Old Yeller to rage really badly. And so what happens here is, well, this is where many of us would call the saddest moment in the movie, but also one of the saddest moments out there that we've ever had to see in a good majority of Walt Disney Pictures related films. Travis takes a rifle and decides to put him down. Now, as I've mentioned before, when I first talked about this, that was a big tearjerker. I mean, every single time I seem to watch it, even now when I'm reminiscing that moment, I do feel like I'd have to shed a few of those little droplets. Well, okay, well, looks like this time is not really the case, but it's only because I'm a desensitized individual. Yet it is still a huge tearjerker of a scene. Walt Disney really executes this sort of stuff. The emotional angle of these things sure do blend together very, very well. The whole film itself has a lot of great moments, has plenty of things out there that you could ever possibly enjoy. You can never pretty much get bored with this. It's got a good casting, and it certainly does have itself some unique source material to work with, being that it came from a book and all that, but of all things considered, I do really love this film over a good majority of which that I have talked about. Specifically for that one scene alone. I mean, having a big emotional angle that really allows even the audience to convey the enormous tragedy that is in fact putting a dog down because of its suffering with something like rabies. That really has a lot of significance even today. Especially that one moment that happened about 2 years ago with Samson the pug. And diabetes, seizures, numbness, old age, all that stuff pretty much combined into one made for a horrible, horrible ending to his life. At 13 years old even. While it is expected that most dogs would die of old age, not all of them could live up to that old. But this is one of those special cases where a movie actually gives us a lasting memory that is forever burned into the back of our hippocampuses. And I do feel that there's probably going to be more examples out there that will hopefully be made to ensure that we won't have to forget about something like this. May it continue to be as significant as possible. So, good work, Disney, from 60-something years ago. But in any case, though, that's all I will be able to talk about here. So, do be sure to stick around, as I will be having more stuff later on. We're getting pretty close to the end of the series even, so I'm pretty surprised with how much I've been able to work on with this. Yet that's what happens when you're able to watch films for the first time in a long time. And more importantly, to recover lost content. I've talked about these films before, minus some of the bonus episodes that I put up on here recently. So in any case, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.